Okay, folks, this is really just going to try to be a quick video for my players. I am running an AD&D Greyhawk campaign at my friendly local game store, and my players are asking me about which books they should get, which books are good, which books, they need in their collection, that kind of thing. So I'm just making a quick video for my players. Maybe somebody else will be interested. I don't know, but I can talk about this all day long. I'm going to try to do it very quickly. Okay, so these are the core rule books for AD&D. Starts off with the monster manual. I've got two different printings of it right here. 1977. Next you have Player's Handbook, 1978, and then and I've got two printings of it, and then the Dungeon Master's Guide, 1979. Those are the only three books: Monster Manual, Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide. Those are the only three books that you need to run the game as a Dungeon Master, and a player obviously doesn't need the Monster Manual. The Dungeon Master's Guide says a player shouldn't read it in the beginning of the book, but if you want to create a character, you have to read it because if you're a thief, it's got information about how thief skills work. If you are a magic user, it's got information about how your spells work. If any character you play, you need the Dungeon Master's Guide to roll up your secondary skill and also to determine the adjustments, ability score adjustments for your age. So just creating a new character because the game was in development, over a period of time. Not all the player-facing information is in the player's handbook. Some of it that you need to roll up a character is in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Yeah. So also some important information about encumbrance. There's stuff in the Dungeon Master's Guide that a player needs in order to roll up a character. Okay. So Monster Manual, interesting thing. It started off with, and a lot of people don't realize this and didn't realize it for years, but there's only 5 alignments and in the Monster Manual, and it uses the old armor class system that starts with armor class 9. By the time the Player's Handbook came out, they added the other alignments, so you're into the 9 alignment system, and then from then on, AD&D stays with 9 alignments all the way up through 2nd edition. So Monster Manual is a little bit of an anomaly. It was the very first book. They put it out, and people didn't have the other, whatever. Okay, I'm going to keep on going. Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide. Those 3 books are all you need to run the game as a Dungeon Master. You'll notice that there's a couple of orange spines. The reason is because in like 83 or 84, they revamped the covers and changed the covers to new artwork and put them with orange spines. So I've got, this is a 1980 printing, and then this is probably an 84 printing. I'm not sure. This is a later printing that has an orange spine. So the interior is exactly the same. The orange spine and the original covers are exactly the same. So don't worry about that. It's just a matter of preference, what cover you like, but the contents are exactly the same. Okay, then after that, there's a whole bunch of other books, and I will just go up front, say right now, this book right here, Monster Manual 2, is the last good book. The last book where I'll say, yeah, these books are all fantastic. If you really want to get into AD&D, get everything up to Monster Manual 2, and I'll explain why. So Deities and Demigods, I believe, came out in 1980. You don't have to have it, but here's why it's useful. I mean, it has a bunch of pantheons: the Sumerian, the Egyptian, the Norse, the Greek. Has all these pantheons of gods with game stats in it, and it's interesting. But Deities and Demigods helps to explain the cosmology of the game, how the planes and the alignment system work, and how it all ties together, like why certain creatures come from certain places. That's all going to be partially explained in Deities and Demigods. The other thing that's useful in here, the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide only go up to ability score, or the Player's Handbook only gives you rules for ability scores up to 18. Deities and Demigods takes it past that. It's got ability score rules for like 19 to 24. So it's weird. The Player's Handbook will say, I think that elves have a maximum dexterity of 19, but there's no information in here about what the rules are for 19 dexterity. Well, that is in Deities and Demigods. So, you don't really need it, but it's interesting that it takes the ability scores beyond 18. And it is possible for player characters to have some ability scores of 19. Okay, Legends and Lore is the orange spine version of Deities and Demigods. They also renamed it, but the interior is the same. Now, the first two printings of Deities and Demigods had it was 144 pages. They took out 2 pantheons after the first 2 printings, and so all the other printings are 128 pages. If you're looking for one from the first 2 printings, it's going to cost you $300, maybe more. It's ridiculous. All I did was I printed out those 2 missing pantheons and I stuck them in my book. I'm not paying $300 for a book. Okay, Legends and Lore, exactly the same as Deities and Demigods, except they changed the title and they changed the cover. Other than that, the interior is the same. Fiend Folio. Fiend Folio, my stack of books is falling over. Fiend Folio started off as a whole bunch of monsters created by fans and published in White Dwarf magazine. They had a section called the Fiend Factory. So Games Workshop in those days had a close relationship with TSR. They started off being the D&D publisher in the UK. Then things went a little bit sour. TSR opened up their own office in the UK and cut out Games Workshop. And so there was an agreement between Games Workshop and TSR to publish a book, the Fiend Folio, of all these monsters that had been in White Dwarf magazine. So this book was sort of ready a few years before it actually got published. It got kicked around back and forth. What ended up happening was the folks in the United States added a bunch of stuff in here. So like the goddess Lolth, the spider goddess, she first appears in here, I believe. Anyway, there's monsters that are added by the people in Lake Geneva at TSR, but most of it is monsters that came out of White Dwarf magazine. Some people hate this book. Some people love this book because, fan-created monsters, some of them can be pretty wonky, but I think it's great. I really like it. It's got a lot of really cool stuff in it. And, if you're a dungeon master and you don't like a monster, you just don't use it. It's that simple. So Fiend Folio, very cool book. This is the only book they never made an orange spine version of. So don't look for an orange spine of the Fiend Folio. They never made an orange spine version of it. I think that's probably because they didn't have the same relationship with Games Workshop as they previously had. And this book required a business relationship with Games Workshop because a lot of it came out of their magazine, White Dwarf. Monster Manual 2, again, another book full of monsters, really cool stuff. It's good. After that, things go kind of off the rails. So I would say, like, if you want to run AD&D, you need the first 3 books. If you really love AD&D, you really want to have everything up to Monster Manual 2. And then after that, we run into an issue with the first one, Unearthed Arcana. So a little bit of background. 84, 85, Gary Gygax was not hands-on in control of D&D. He was working out in California, trying to get, working on the D&D cartoon, trying to get a D&D movie made. He had, his first marriage had fallen apart. He developed a little bit of a cocaine habit. He was, and business was really going bad for TSR. They made a whole bunch of bad business decisions. I'm not going to get into it, but they had bank loans. They didn't have the cash to pay their bank loans. The bank was going to call in the loans and force them into bankruptcy. So they knew that so they turned to Gary and they said, "Hey, we need you to put out an AD&D hardback real fast because all the AD&D hardbacks sell really well, and it'll generate a bunch of cash that we need to pay the bank loans so that we don't go out of business." So, and I'm not going to get into all the business stuff. Gary was also at war with his partners. It's a long story. The owners weren't getting along with each other. It was a bad time. So they took a whole bunch of articles from Dragon magazine, put them together, and published Unearthed Arcana really fast. They published it cheaply. It did not have as good a quality binding as all the previous books did, so a lot of copies of Unearthed Arcana, the pages started falling out because it was much cheaper binding. They omitted a bunch of the artwork that was in the original articles, so it's got pros and cons. I think it has more cons than it has pros, so I'm not using it for this campaign. The other reason, I could cherry pick it and pick out all the good stuff. There is some good stuff in it, but I've got a lot of new players, and I don't want the game to be overwhelming with rules, with player-facing rules. So, yeah, I'm not going to go into, I really want to, but I'm not going to go into great detail about what's good and what's bad. There's some stuff in here that totally breaks the game, and there's some stuff in here that's pretty cool. So it's stuff that really wasn't play tested very well. It's wonky about the way it's set up. It's got a section in the front for players and a section in the back for dungeon masters. So you've got a table of contents in the front, and then you've got a table of contents in the middle of the book. It's weird, and a lot of the old printings were also very low quality binding. Yeah, so they put that out real fast because they had no choice. They needed cash in the bank to pay off their loans. They were about to go out of business. It has some stuff in here that was written by Gary, some stuff that was written by Roger Moore, Len Kafka, other people. It's got some good stuff in here, but it's got some stuff it's got spells that are way too overpowered for their it's got a lot of issues. It's got the class archetype system gets broken by this book. It's got a few classes in it that are really not well designed at all. It breaks the experience points for leveling system that the game had previously been based on. There's a lot of issues with this. There is cool stuff in here, but there's also a lot of issues. So Oriental Adventures, they also put out the same year, not long afterwards. Again, this was a rush job. It says Gary Gygax, but Gary did not actually write any of this book. He just wrote a foreword for the book. The book was actually written by Zeb Cook, and Zeb Cook had to slap it together and get it out pretty quick. Now, to his credit, Cook did tons of research, and he also used a group of playtesters in Japan, and they gave feedback and adjusted the manuscript. So there are people on the internet that will tell you that this is a horrible racist book. Well, actually, there's one guy on the internet who has a whole bunch of followers who says that this is a racist book. It's not. It's a work of love. They wanted to incorporate Eastern mythologies and magics and that kind of thing into the game, whereas previously it was mostly Western mythologies, Greek, Nordic, that kind of thing. But they dove headfirst into Eastern mythologies, yeah. So you can play a samurai. Okay, I don't know why I went out of focus. So you can play a samurai. It's got a lot of problems though. It does a couple of things. For one thing, It does not follow the system where subclasses fight as their archetype class. So all the subclasses, most of the subclasses do not fight the same as their archetype, which means you can no longer just make simple combat tables, because Mr. Cook didn't seem to realize the core mechanics of the game when he wrote this. There is a lot of cool stuff in here. There are cool new classes, but it also opens the door for multi-classing for humans, whereas previously, as part of game design, only demi-humans could multi-class. Oriental Adventures, he introduced the ninja class as a multi-class for humans. So you're not just like a fighter. If you want to be a samurai, you have to be, if you want to be a ninja, you have to be another class and then take ninja as a multi-class. And basically he opened the door for multi-classing for humans, which had never been in the game, and it kind of breaks the balance of the game. The other thing he did in this book that's totally egregious is he added a generic universal skill system. Previously, all of the skills were class-based. You had thief skills that thieves get, and tracking skills that rangers get, and that kind of thing. With this book, he added the concept, sort of like what RuneQuest does, of like universal skills like swimming, horseback riding, cow milking. He added all these skills that anybody could get, and then a system where anytime you try to do something, you have to roll to see if you succeed in that skill, and you want to improve your skills, etc., etc. That all started in AD&D with Oriental Adventures, and then it continued. The issue is it stops being a experience point class-based system, and it starts being experience points and classes, but oh yeah, there's this whole skill system tacked on that's separate, that applies to everybody. So Gary wrote years later, he said that he thought that, a game is best if it's all skills or all experience-based leveling, but trying to mash them together was a mistake. It was a mistake. So starting with Unearthed Arcana, the game kind of goes off the rails. There's some good stuff in these books, but there's also a lot of big problems. So people usually call Unearthed Arcana and Beyond AD&D 1.5 edition, because things start to go rapidly off the rails. So the next two books somebody asked me about recently: Wilderness Survival Guide, Dungeoneer Survival Guide, and Wilderness Survival Guide. I think, did Doug Niles do both of them? No, Kim Mohan did one. They continue this new skill system, introducing new skills. So really, the only reason to get these books is if you want to incorporate this whole new skill system that came out in Oriental Adventures, and you want more skills. Then you want these two books, Dungeoneer Survival Guide and Wilderness Survival Guide. Other than that, they're really just fluff hardbacks. They were put out at a time when the people who created Dungeons and Dragons were no longer at TSR. Okay, so after Oriental Adventures came out, Gary lost control of the company. His partners sold their shares to a hostile takeover force. They worked together for a few months, and then that person, basically, Gary was a minority owner. That person had security escort Gary out of the building, locked him out of his office, and there was lawsuits. There was eventually a settlement. They continued suing Gary on into the 90s, and attacking him personally. Things got really bad after Oriental Adventures came out. So the people who originally created D&D are no longer associated with or in charge of D&D at this point, okay? So they're putting out these hardbacks. The person who owned the company literally did not game and did not like gamers. She did, I think, a 60 Minutes interview where she's making fun of her customers, saying that they don't do normal things like go to museums and go to football games. Instead, they're just a bunch of dorks who go to game conventions. Like she hated her own employees and she hated her own customers, and you can tell in the she had a new policy where she would not allow employees to game on company time. So none of the stuff that was put out was play tested because she wouldn't allow employees to use company time to play test anything. So things go really off the rails. I could keep going, but anyway. So Dungeoneer Survival Guide has one cool thing in it. It has these 2D isometric maps that show a dungeon master how to map out an underworld for their campaign, and that's pretty cool. It's got information that kind of tells you about what it would be like environmentally to explore underground, to adventure underground. It's interesting. It's not something anybody really needs. Wilderness Survival Guide actually had some stuff in it that's cool and some stuff that breaks the game. So accidentally, the Wilderness Survival Guide has a little blurb in it about the way magic magic weapons work. Previously, magic weapons, the magic of the weapon caused the thing to work. And Wilderness Survival Guide changed that and introduced these rules where the player has to actually be involved or see things, or it changed the fundamental way that magic weapons work in Dungeons and Dragons, and they did it on accident. So these two books, when they came out, they got really bad reviews, and all the game. If you look back at all the gaming magazines of the time, these two books got terrible reviews. There's this one thing in the Wilderness Survival Guide that I think is cool. Well, there are rules for like surviving in bad weather that's interesting and probably usable. I've never used it. Like say you're in an Arctic landscape. How much clothing do you need? How much damage do you take? Say you're in a desert, you don't have any water. How long does it take for you to, start taking damage from lack of water? That kind of thing is in here, and that's interesting. One of the things that's in the Wilderness Survival Guide that I really like is, and I've never used it, but it looks really cool. It has rules for mining. So say you're a higher level character and you want to go carve a realm or some territory out of the wilderness. You want to go prospecting. You want to go find a silver mine, a gold mine. It's got rules in here for prospecting and what you might find, precious metals deposits, gemstone deposits. It's got rules for how much it costs to develop a mine, how much money you might make out of a mine. That's cool. I've never seen it used. I've always wanted to use it. So if any of you ever want to go mining, let me know, and I'll pull this book out and take a closer look at the rules. Manual of the Plains is really cool. Jeff Grubb took all of the information about the cosmology up until this point and stuck it together into a book called Manual of the Plains. It's fantastic. You don't have to have it. A player does not need this. I think it's really, really cool for a dungeon master, but your players are not going to go to the outer planes. They might slip into the ethereal plane or something, but you really don't need this unless you're running a high level campaign. But it does have, there are a few new monsters in the back of it that are interesting. One of the things he didn't do, Len Lakofka wrote I don't know, it's weird. Roger Moore wrote a really cool article in Dragon Magazine about the astral plane, and it was included in here, and he was credited and thanked. Len Lakofka wrote a really cool article about the ethereal plane. That information is included in here, but he was not even mentioned, and it's probably because he was a friend of Gary Gygax. Whatever. This is a really cool book. The cover artwork is great. The information in it is fantastic. It ties together all the planes. If you want to know what it's like to be in the elemental plane of water, you can pull this out. It tells you how spells work differently on different planes. It's for a dungeon master. This is really cool. The player doesn't need it at all. Um, Dragonlance Adventures is only useful if you are playing in a campaign in the Dragonlance setting. Otherwise, there's nothing in here that's useful to you. It has classes, spells. It's got your Gully Dwarves and your Kenders and your Draconians. It's got all the stuff you need to play AD&D in the Dragonlance Kryn setting. But it's very specialized. If you're not playing in that setting, this book is completely useless. Um, it's got spells, but they're like setting specific spells that don't really make sense in other settings. Greyhawk Adventures is the very last book that came out before. It's the very last hardback that was put out for AD&D before second edition came out. It's called Greyhawk Adventures. It came out in early 1989, and in mid 1989, second edition came out. So you've got Dragonlance Adventures and Greyhawk Adventures. They would later put out a Forgotten Realms Adventures book, except that didn't make it out until second edition. So this is the very last AD&D hardback book that was ever put out. It was put out by Jim Ward, and here's the story behind it. The owner, she who shall not be named, of Dungeons and Dragons and TSR, who hated gamers and treated her employees terribly, she went to Jim Ward, who was head of the creative department for D&D at the time, and she said, I need you to put out an AD&D hardback in 3 months, and if you don't get it done, you have to fire half the creative staff. So Jim Ward put this together in 3 months, not even having a manuscript or even notes. He went from that to a published hardback book in 3 months. He sat down, typed up a whole ton of stuff, scraped together some artwork, slapped it on, and he put this book out. It's cool, but absolutely nothing in it is play tested. He did make some changes to some of the deities I'm not a fan of. It's got new spells in it. It's got new classes in it. It's got new magic. No, I don't know if it has new classes. It has new magic items in it. It's just basically anything that Jim could think of to fill an AD&D hardback about Greyhawk at the time. He just typed it up and stuck it in this book. The one thing that's particularly interesting is it has rules for 0 level characters, whereas before that, I don't think ever in the history of role-playing games there had never been rules for playing a 0 level character. Usually you start off at first level. But he put in here rules if you want to start at 0 level. If you play DCC, DCC is known for having rules for 0 level characters. But that all started here with Greyhawk Adventures. It was never play tested. Jim just kind of made it up. He's a good game designer, but it was never play tested. So those are all the AD&D hardback books. Everything up until Monster Manual 2 is fantastic. Everything after that is a real big problem, but there are some tidbits of cool stuff in these books. They're not complete garbage. It's just that if you try to incorporate these books, they will break your game. So the first 3 books are really the important ones, and a player doesn't obviously need Monster Manual. I'm not going to go through everything. These are like other AD&D rules books I have that are not hardback, and these are my AD&D modules. Most of them, not all of them. The official ones. These are some of the third-party AD&D modules that I have. And then, so I've got, there's lots of third-party products for AD&D. You don't need any of this stuff, but it's cool. So stuff from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and then things kind of died off until Osric came out in 2006, and that opened the floodgates. And these are all products that were created for AD&D by other people. Hyperborea, you see some of them use the orange spine. This is Raphael Chandler. He kept using the orange spine. Um, Scott Taylor, Joe Black, they kept using the orange spine. Jeff Talanian kept using the orange spine. Um, yeah, so Hyperborea is a near clone of AD&D. It's not exactly AD&D, but it's, if you read it, it's almost exactly the same. There's some small differences. It's very compatible. Um, Whatever. You don't need any of this stuff. I don't have everything. Some of these people have put out more things. These are like monster books, books of new spells, new classes, new rules, new magic items, all that stuff. But you can see like Hasbro owns the game, but all the cool stuff is being created by people. The people who are supporting this game do not work at Hasbro. The people who work at Hasbro don't even know this game exists, really. I mean, they collect money through Drive-Thru RPG, and so their accountants know about it, but they're not supporting the game at all. The game is really being loved and supported by fans, small publishers, third-party people, people like you and me who say, "Hey, I've got an idea. I'm going to slap it all together and publish it." Yeah. So, okay, there you go. Those are all the official. Sorry, I talked for too long. I was trying to keep it short. Those are the official hardbacks for AD&D. If you want to be a DM, you only need the first 3 books. If you want to be a player, you only need the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide. But in my campaign, there's a way to play without having a single book, and we've talked about that. Anyway, thanks. Bye.